The fiesta. The sun was gentle, the air clear, and the sky cloudless. Buried in the sand, the clay pot steamed. As they went from ocean to mouth, the shrimp passed through the hands of Fernando, master of ceremonies, who bathed them in a holy water of salt, onions, and garlic. There was good wine. Seated in a circle, we friends shared the wine and shrimp and the ocean that spread out free and luminous at our feet. As it took place, that happiness was already being remembered by our memory. It would never end, nor would we. For we are all mortal until the first kiss and the second glass, which is something everyone knows, no matter how small his or her knowledge. It was Eduardo Galeano, wonderful Uruguayan writer. Poem by me. Emerson said it so well, as in Ralph Waldo Emerson. Emerson said it so well. Live in the sunshine, swim in the sea, drink the wild air is what he said. And this poem is about that. Live in the sunshine. There's no other place I can live, wish to live, with love, with friends, with myself. Swim in the sea. A lively a stroke and afloat in salty blue, cool green oceans, likewise in glimmer-glass seas of possibility that invite, that invoke. Drink the wild air, drinking in all the wildness my senses 5 and 6th can find in the open, can absorb the atmospheres of. Thank you, Ralph Waldo, for your essential knowing, your urging, this inspiriting. Welcome everyone leaning in from various corners of the country and world, listening into the latest floating poetry broadcast, the 17th in this weekly series, coming to you live again from the bright coast of Rhode Island, by the sea, the giving, flowing sea. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, tonight inviting each and all of you into the waters of life, of living, to enter fresh and evocative, maybe provocative places of feeling, imagination, and contemplation around life's literal, metaphorical, and internal waters. Your waters of being and your waters of becoming. So, dipping into some of them now, a few selections from a few favorite books, some very well-loved, well-worn. And I want to come back to John O'Donohue again, the wonderful Irish philosopher poet. This is from The Invisible Embrace, Beauty, The Invisible Embrace. And he talks about what I would call the waters of beauty. To behold beauty dignifies your life. It heals you and calls you out beyond the smallness of your own self-limitation to experience new horizons. To experience beauty is to have your life enlarged. In German, they say such a person has a große Ausstrahlung, literally a flowing forth of radiance, a flowing forth of radiance. The individual is no longer confined within the frame of her own identity. There is a light and beauty which no frontier can limit or contain. It has a distinctive dignity. Like consciousness, beauty shines with a light from beyond itself. In medieval thought, Albert Magnus spoke of beauty as the brilliance of an object's form shining forth in its sensible presence. Beauty is not to be captured or controlled, for there is something intrinsically elusive in its nature. More like a visitation than a solid fact, beauty invests the aura of a person or infuses a landscape with an unexpected intimacy that satisfies our longing. I love that about the flowing forth, and I think all the best things, are flowing things are in a flow, in a natural flow, beautiful flow, pure flow. As we think about the waters of life. They come through all the senses. And so here's the, listening to the waters of life, seeing them, listening to them, feeling them, tasting them. All these different ways we can experience them. Of course, also spiritually, right all the way out on that end of the spectrum. I thought too about, well, I'll confess, if you don't know it already, I am an animist. So I think everything has an aliveness. Certainly, the animal kingdom, but also the seemingly inanimate things like boulders. I mean, they contain great memory and energy. And this is Celtic in its way because they were animists. They honored the forces of nature. They saw the world as inhabited by spirits. They saw the divine in their way manifesting in aspects of the natural world. And the ancient Celts, they believed that many spirits and divine beings inhabited the world around them, and that we, humans, could establish a rapport with them. And I'm very much in tune with that as I move through the world and just the day, like beachcombing, and I feel like I have a rapport with the seaweeds and the grasses and the stones and many things. Certainly the fish and the fishermen, which we'll get to later. But that whole notion of perceiving the presence of the supernatural waters of life interwoven with our material world. So every mountain, river, spring, marsh, tree, everything was inspirited. So if you look at that, put that lens on your days or times, and bring some honoring to the fact that they're spirits of places and things that we might ordinarily think are inert, but they're not. I thought part of our beginning might be a feeling of floating on the waters of life, spirit, call it what you will, literal or inside ourselves, like our dream time. And this is called You Float, this poem by me. You float low and supinely over the night landscape, over the sleeping garden, over the waves of close-by surf sound, your body draped, caressed loosely and so lightly in a soft white cloud. Float quietly and so gently at your mooring between dreaming and waking, not thinking, no thinking in any way, shape, or form, just floating, just feeling. And then what about the joys of life on the water, like sailing? I'm a sailor, and there's some of those kinds of experiences, and this was up in Maine a while back, Sullivan, Maine, called The Sailor and the Seal, and I was out in a small sailboat and had this experience. Tacking toward home in a soft wind, you pop up off the bow like a periscope, your smooth head sleek with salt water, blonde mustache oiled, nose like a Kalamata, round eyes glistening, and seeing us approach, you dunk down again below the surface and disappear into the clear, fish-filled harbor. The Sailor and the Seal from Maine. And then the harvests that the waters offer us. And this was back on the Great South Bay with my dear friends, Roger and Irvy, clamming at sunset, group of us. Just the act of that, sort of in these flowing waters and pulling these beautiful creatures out. Sunset ripples out from the horizon where a cloud curtain has just gone up. It ripples at a soft right angle across the salted water, encircles our wrists, our waiting ankles like beaten gold bracelets, as we zenly reach down together through the low, low tide for clams laying cool and quiet in the Great South Bay, the soon unshelled center of a serendipitous Saturday feast of good men, women, wine, and willing mollusks. And how do we feel about the waters we enter, encounter, move through, mix with, of people's characters, whether it's close people or people we meet as we move through our lives, like this dear friend of mine forever, Laura Lee Bruce, in Sag Harbor, that I wrote for one of her birthdays, The Ballad of the Laura Lee. Thought of her sort of in a ship metaphor, a boat metaphor. The Ballad of the Laura Lee. My, she's yar, so easy to hand, reef and helm. Her white sails gracefully inhaling the wind and sun, filling, too, with salt-watered sea-song, her beautiful beaming and reaching through changing seas and seasons of life and love, the deeps and shallows of youth and growth, her even keel, clear course, all of her well, wonderfully underway. So I'm rippling that out to Laura Lee. I'll let her know that I honored her tonight. And sort of on that, in that vein, the waters of close-hearted gatherings, which we are all, I know, so hungry for. We need to be close together in person as soon again as possible. Certainly some of the greatest joys of my life were those feasts, and I'm missing them terribly. I'm sure many of you are, maybe all of us. So feastings like this one, I thought I'd call it up and sort of touchstone to those things. And this was written and experienced during a poet in residency in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, that I did several times. It's called Brooklyn Meets Jerusalem. And the reference to Jerusalem is the Ottolenghi cookbook that I borrowed a recipe from and riffed off of, and that was the centerpiece of the meal. I think it was a roasted chicken and clementine dish, very interesting. Brooklyn Meets Jerusalem. At a table in a once German church, reverently last century Lutheran, now with a free, spirited mix of modern brethren, 3 women, an Indian, a Malaysian, and 1 from Sweden, and 3 men from the high city, the green country, and 1 from Oz. A table of friends around a Middle Eastern dish of fresh roasted chicken, fennel bulbs and clementines, white and red wines, eau de vie. Around stories, songs from a balcony, cakes, candles, and Cobble Hill calm. Around a poet's 59th year, bridging old and new worlds, histories, serendipities, blending with joys of here with dreams of next, embracing life wherever and however surprisingly it brings us. And doesn't it bring us many interesting places, these waters we've each been on, respectively been on? Who knows where they're taking us next? I go back to our last program about adventure. If we can take on that wherever they're taking us adventurously, I think we're going to do better. The rich waters of memory that can flow for a lifetime. I was talking with one of my dear mentors of so many years, 40 plus years. I'm lucky to have several of them, wise men. And he was telling me about a taste of ice cream from his childhood. And I asked him a few questions about it, and I thought, isn't that marvelous? He can remember the taste of that one day, having that ice cream that stayed with him delightfully. He's in his 80s now, so his entire life. Taste memory. So I wrote this for him recently, very recently, just the other week or so. It's called Black Raspberry for Dick Russack, right now out in Fort Worth, Texas. The year was 1947. The place, Reno, Nevada. High summer. 2 boys from the east, visiting their way out west relatives. You and your brother Bert, sent to town with enough change jingling in your pockets to buy ice cream. At the parlor beside the casino. At sea among the endless flavors on offer, your brother suggests black raspberry. Oh, I don't have the rest of it. I'm sorry, we're not going to get to that. We'll have to come back to that. It ends well. Yeah. Sorry about that. I thought I had page 2. So let's move along to talk about the places where our physical bodies meet nature, meet the elements, the elemental, and commune. Like a confluence of waters of a kind, I suppose we could think of. We think of rivers meeting. And this was an experience of that in Rockland Harbor, Rockland, Maine, in an Indian summer a couple of years ago. I did a poet in residency up there, and amazing time. And this happened one night. I blessed this body while the town sleeps and dreams behind me, and pined islands lay silently, invisibly off the salt-tongued shore. I rise, bare-bodied, from my warm bed out into the cool, falling rain, to bless this being of flesh and bone, heart and soul, to feel the wildness of nature. Let the blissful, sensual world touch my willing skin, bathe my upraised face, fill my upturned palms. Let the elements of this pure living place anoint me on this pouring autumn night. And what about the waters of love we discover, we travel through, live in, move with wonderful others, if we're lucky, as I was, as I have been, hope to be again. This is called oceans. Those green eyes of yours I swam in, summers. Those ripe lips of yours, that fresh and tender tongue I tasted on mine island winds. Those balmy hands that tenderly caressed my skin, nape to thighs. Suns, those warm lines of yours I gently parted and invitingly joined with, sang with, skin to skin. Oh, intimate waters, very important. Then I think the waters of loss, especially of heartbreak, and other poets, many others have talked about this, and David White, for example, more contemporarily, that it's as vital as the heartmake is the heartbreak in forming us and shaping and seasoning us through life. So we can't, I think, be as fully human, fully evolved and enlarged and enriched unless we go through both the heartmake and the heartbreak. And this poem, after a very immense heartbreak of mine in time, is called Losing the Flow. Losing the Flow. For one who bathed body and spirit in its free-form currents, breathed in its fresh rushings, who lived and fished, loved and dreamt for lyrical years along its soft green banks. Losing the flow, the natural course, wild coursing of a great river, comes as a bewildering surprise. You watch, amazed, dazed, as the water recedes, then how you begin to devitalize like the earth before you that dries and cracks. Witness the water flowers wither, the birds and fish disappear, taking their bright songs and buoyant gestures with them. Feel annoying, dispiriting take hold. A growing emptiness you can't reverse. Experience your once flush, daily quenched feelings of desire, delight wane, drain away like the whole vanishing river. You hang on, try to, for a time, caught in the loss, held in a hard press of longing, disbelieving, until the last remaining hope of this dear river's return evaporates, and you gather your parched, puzzled self and depart to seek out a new oasis, a life-giving source of another, even if lesser kind, to flow through the next seasons of your life, to keep your body, your soul, likewise, vitally streaming and ever moving, ever dreaming toward the sea. As we've talked about in other broadcasts, the just pure aspects of encountering, engaging, embracing nature, just reign in all its purity and simplicity. And back in August, the same month, back in a couple of years, was a great rain that fell, and what happened with me in that great rain. It rushes down from the suddenly ink-black clouds with a sheer waterfall sound, occluding everything else from hearing. A vertical river flowing in a fresh condensation, a watery syncopation of unstrung beads tinged with the color of the summer, showering green leaves. A monsoon in miniature I stand under, as it quenches, washes over my upturned face, my thirsting self, the thirsting earth beneath my feet. So when I think about as a poet of the waters of life and nature, waters of nature, literal and otherwise, I just can never get enough of them. I'm always drinking them in, and I invite us all to drink them in as much as we can, whenever we can. Like the sight of water alone that we encounter in our lives, our travels, and its interplay with everything else, that just the sight is beautifully blinded by the blaze of winter sun on the winter sea, by the bar of wild bright silver filling my mesmerized eyes. By the ways like this, the heavens and earth can simply, suddenly, and so beautifully dazzle us. Beautifully blinded. There's an Irish poet I haven't read before, To Us, and his name is Evan Boland. And this poem spoke to me as fitting for tonight. It's called The Achill Woman, Achill. She came up the hill carrying water. She wore a half-buttoned wool cardigan, a tea towel round her waist. She pushed her hair out of her eyes with her free hand and put the bucket down. The zinc music of the handle on the rim tuned the evening. An Easter moon rose. In the next door field, a stream was a fluid sunset, and then stars. I remember the cold rosiness of her hands. She bent down and blew on them like broth, and round her waist, on a white background, in coarse woven letters, the words, glass cloth. She was nearly finished for the day, and I was all talk, raw from college weekending at a friend's cottage with one suitcase and the set text of the court poets of the Silver Age. We stayed putting down time until the evening turned cold without warning. She said good night and started down the hill. The grass changed from lavender to black. The trees turned back to cold outlines. You could taste frost, but nothing now can change the way I went indoors, chilled by the wind, and made a fire and took down my book and opened it and failed to comprehend the harmonies of servitude, the grace music gives to flattery and language borrows from ambition, and how I fell asleep, oblivious to the planets clouding over in the skies, the slow decline of the spring moon, the songs crying out their ironies. Thank you, Evan Boland. And we won't become oblivious. I think if we do anything, maybe we can be much less oblivious to all these marvels happening around us, all these waters flowing around us of all kinds, like the waters, swimming through the waters of our imagination. So I'm in this absolutely lovely place right by the sea, and I'm often musing on it, walking in it, by it, swimming, etc. And one day I could see, I said, maybe I could swim to Spain. And not sure about the sea monsters on the way, but I was musing on it in my imagination. What would that be like? And so this poem came about, swimming to Spain from the sandy shore of Rhode Island, breaststroking out on a summer morning when the sun is low and warm and the sea is blue, till the bathers in striped umbrellas on the beach grow smaller and disappear out of view, and soon the only company are gulls and clouds above the schools and fish below the bright surface, dreams swimming towards Spain for tapas and paella and mouthfuls of ice-cold albariño. Well, I haven't gone yet, but there's still time. So, one of my favorite recent experiences and stories and poems now, very fresh, no one's heard this yet, it's called Holy Mackerel. So I was on the beach, there's always many fishermen surf casting, and I decided I would be a fish whisperer and just call them to me. And absolutely, it happened. I have it on film. They came flying out all around me. I threw them all back in, but there they were. So this is called holy mackerel. One moment, I'm there at the ocean's edge watching the water begin to wildly froth. The next moment, dozens of eager mackerel, chub mackerel, spring out onto the sand all around my legs with their dilated eyes, glistening skin, green and white flexing bodies. One by flapping one, 21 all told. I picked them up and tossed them with a blessing back into the sea to swim on, to live freely, beautifully on. Send them back into their waters where they belong. I can't remember who said it. I don't know if it was David White, but it might have been. Give up all the worlds except the one to which you belong. So, how about the waters? Give up all the waters except the ones which you belong in. And I think we need to find our natural waters and stay there. Speaking of the fish and fishermen here, there's lots of them I've gotten to know, and there's 3 old-timers I call the 3 fishketeers instead of musketeers. And I was talking with them the other day, and I asked them a question, and this prompted this poem called Catching Mermaids for Ken, Doug, and John, the 3 fishketeers. What was the strangest thing you ever caught, I asked. Years ago, an eel pout, one of you said, and a kingfish. A Jack Crevalle, said another. I bet you never caught a mermaid, I said. And if you did, you wouldn't throw her back. Well, not right away, said the 3rd fishketeer. Catching mermaids. Now, of course, as a mixologist, among many other things, I said I can't talk about the waters of life without talking about the fire waters, the spirits, the distilled spirits. And I speak as a great appreciator of them, and this was from Greece. I think I might have read this at the very beginning of the series, but I can't quite remember. It might have been 1 or 2 broadcasts. But this was from the Cyclades in August of 2012, actually, and it's called the Ouzo Hour. The Ouzo Hour. If anybody knows what ouzo tastes like, it's interesting. I happen to like it. That and Retsina. The ouzo hour. The hour when limbs loosen, eyes soften, anise, ice, and water alchemize. Sun dissolves into saffron, chartreuse. The upper bodies of bathers become half gold, the lower half blue. Moon phosphoresces, spirit floats, conversation flirts, night coalesces. The ouzo hour. On a sort of related note, is the joys of just having a shower, indoor or out. This is called Sin Sal, was written in Mexico some winters back. It's called Without Salt. You enter the hot shower at that tile-cool time of day. Clear, cleansing water washes away the salt of the day's sea and air, slips over your body like a second skin, warms you through like liquid sun after the sun is set, and before fresh clothes are put on and fruit drinks are poured and lanterns are lit for dinner. So as we come to the close of our time tonight, a few last pieces. It's also from part of Mexico on the coast, Xalacoco, Mexico. It shimmers. It shimmers in the sun and under the moon. It shimmers in the mind and on the ceiling of the seaside room. Like the tide, this ever-changing life of ours, restless and constant in its arrivals and departures, ephemeral and confederal, bringing friendships, moments, enlightenments in, carrying lives, chapters, sentiments out, showing us its natural flow of highs and lows, fullness and ebbings, its breathing-like balancing act, the beauty and mystery of our earth shared impermanency. So, last pieces, last 2, and then a And then a goodbye for the moment. An auf Wiedersehen for the moment. This is written for my cousin who's a fellow poet, Dee Dee Cummings, up in Vermont on one of her birthdays. When you're flowing, when your heart is full, when your senses are open to all that's inside and out, when you're singing your life song, dancing your life dance, wild and free, to music only you can once in this lifetime make, everything is poetry. And this one was dedicated to my goddaughter Axel on the 19th anniversary of her baptism. She happens, I think, to be in Montana, in the wilds of Montana right now. This is called The Waters. The ones that anoint you, body and soul, that fall from the heavens in the form of rain, soft and clear, that fall from the sun and moon in showers of pure light, that rise from your heart to your eyes as tears of joy, when great joy is there, or deep presence, or great sadness, that bathe you in their beauty, blue oceans to mirror-faced lakes, all the waters of life, aliveness, that flow through your days, that will always find you, fill you, body and soul. Thank you again for leaning in, and in these unusually challenging times, helping support these programs and poetic arts with your most welcome donations. Contributions are easily makeable by PayPal and Venmo and directly through my site. I invite your comments, and I do appreciate hearing how I'm making a difference, opening you to other ways or deeper ways of seeing and thinking and feeling. Above all, I'm grateful for your enthusiasms and for spreading word of these offerings around your circles. Replays of all the broadcasts are online to share or hear another time. I do hope you'll lean in next time. I'd welcome your presence. Until then, good days ahead, fuller flowing days, and good spirits.